So I grew up in motocross. From the time I was 8 or 9 years old, I was on a dirt bike and competitively raced pretty soon thereafter, all through high school. And my life cycle, if you will, in motocross is very representative of the normal lifestyle in motocross, which is the whole family gets a dirt bike, they all start riding for fun, and then usually one of the siblings really latches on. And then there's tons of sacrifices made financially, time-wise, for that one sibling that continues to race. And so my family sacrificed everything for the sake of me being able to go and race week in and week out. And ultimately it resulted in division in my family. Me and my dad went to the race every weekend. My brother and my mom stayed home. And kind of as a result of that, my parents got divorced and it was a broken home, and that's so common in motocross. Our desire is not just to reach kids for the gospel. That's a huge part of what we do, but to reach and speak into that family aspect, because it's so easy to sacrifice everything on the altar of motocross. FCA sees a value in the shift away from your traditional stick and ball type sports in the schools to club type sports, and so they provided us with a platform to preach, teach, and share the gospel through the sport of motocross. So we do that three basic ways: through camps, teams, and trackside ministry. Our camps are week-long, training intensive. We bring in some of the biggest names in the sport of motocross, the best trainers in the sport of motocross. We train our riders from the age of 5 to 75 years old in the sport of motocross. All the while, we're equipping them spiritually. We pour in them through Bible studies throughout the day. We put on a full chapel service, bring in a qualified preacher, great band to come. And it's not the end-all be-all. We're not event-driven, but that is a great catalyst, a great starting point for people to then flow into even the teams, which we train teams of 3 to 5 people as a part of our Every Track, Every Week initiative, which is our ultimate goal is to facilitate a trackside Bible study at every track in Texas every week of the year. And there's dozens of them. So we create content to equip those volunteers to go and facilitate the Bible studies at their local tracks. And then trackside ministry is 2 things, really. It's preaching at large. We preach every morning at the races. We'll do a chapel service at a race for everybody at the track. We usually do it at riders meeting, so it could be hundreds or thousands of people hearing the message, which is great. But then more than that, our focus is the individual discipleship.
One of the coolest things that it's been fun to watch, how you have a kid come in as a first-time camper to, say, 3 years later, approach you and want to come and volunteer at your camp and as a huddle leader, or maybe leading our Every Track, Every Week Bible studies. That's been one of the most encouraging things for us as a ministry to see, and that's the goal. Is we want to train and equip kids and parents in the gospel so that they're out sharing as well in our Bible studies and around the world.
One particular story, a guy that became a really good friend of mine named David, about 6 years ago sent his kids to camp because he wanted his kids to be influenced by the Bible, by gospel, by this atmosphere. He didn't come, but he sent his kids. They had a great time, learned a ton, and because of that, him and I kindled a relationship. Got to where we were talking on the phone for an hour or two, pretty much every day, and kind of started out with some secondary kind of questions, nothing too meaty, but quickly turned into deep, meaty issues of the gospel, some questions he had, some doubts he had, concerns he had, and just talking through those kinds of things. And kind of at that critical moment there in his life, I got to see his family go from a real similar situation to that which mine was in. Mine ended in divorce. His ended in the gospel impacting him, changing his thoughts, attitudes, desires, his whole life force, motivations, all of it, from self to the gospel. David passed away earlier this year from brain cancer, and on his deathbed, I got to hear him say repeatedly that nothing else matters but the gospel. And that's why we do this. A couple of our biggest needs are finances and volunteers. Volunteers for events, we have an advisory board of people that help to cast vision for the ministry, see the ministry grow and develop. Volunteers for our Bible study programs, our Every Track, Every Week initiative. we're happy to send non-motocross people out into the motocross community to share the gospel, and they're very receptive. Our camps are highly volunteer intensive. If we've got 60 riders, we'll have 60 volunteers. Some of those are motocross specific. A majority of them are not. Just there to serve and be a hand. And then finances is huge. Every dollar we spend is something that's been raised. We operate essentially the same way a foreign missionary would, which is by individual financial partners. So lots of individual families that give monthly. Monthly support is our lifeblood. That's how we can budget and plan and look forward to the things that we're going to do during the year.
Not having any kind of a background in motocross at all, I still feel like I am a crucial part to the ministry and can make an impact within the community.
Our aim is to create opportunities for the gospel to do what the gospel does, and that's reform lives, change lives. And we believe that will result in a culture shift within the sport of motocross.